you were inviting a classroom pedagogy associated with tests. And the problem with that, as I see it, which came up a few times, sort of, it's related, it's teaching to the test, but I think the underlying philosophy of it that troubles me is that students who struggle on standardized tests need more of the same in order to get better at it. So there's an assumption that students who struggle on test day need a lot of test-looking stuff for the rest of the year, while other students who do okay on test day are somehow ready for learning to look different. So in terms of how all of this translates into pedagogy, I think it goes to some pretty troubling places to imagine what teaching is almost certainly going to have to look like the more that teachers see their welfare as tied to how students do on tests. That point, I think, in general, was at the heart of your argument when you talked about teaching to the test. I think that's an important one. Another issue, though, I think, is that both sides were trying to make some arguments about how this would impact not just the quality of teaching, which you both speculated about a bit, but also the recruitment of teachers, the supply of teachers. Does this bring teachers in or push them away? And one issue, I think, in a lot of the merit pay proposals that, in addition to trying to change how money gets distributed to teachers, is also trying to take on which teachers get to stay, which ones get fired. An issue with that is that we already have quite a teacher shortage, and it's about to get a whole lot worse. So having to me, I think it's impossible to evaluate a system for evaluating teachers without considering where that's going to get you. And I am not optimistic about bringing a lot of new blood into the teaching force they'd have to be really, really big merit upsides for the teachers who do the best. Thinking about the status of the teaching profession right now and what that has to do with who ends up teaching the students, to me, shifts the conversation largely away from merit pay altogether. I might think of something else to say to this, but that's all I have.
Excellent. Thank you.
Very, very good job on both sides.
I'm going to stand on the other side, actually. My name's Jon Ferguson. I'm also a doctoral student at the Warner School. And my area of research is in standardized testing and human motivation as it relates to a theory of psychology that's actually homegrown here at the University of Rochester called self-determination theory. Ed DC and Rich Ryan from the psychology department would have a lot to weigh in on this issue. And so I'd encourage anybody who's really interested in this debate and the topics contained here to really look into that, because I think there's a lot of valid way into that. The reason I'm sitting on this side is because, as I understand, the topic of debate was really specifically tied to teacher compensation and whether that should be tied directly to standardized test scores. And I think, first of all, that the government did a great job of talking about how there's an importance to have a multifaceted evaluation system for teachers, and how part of that needs to be tied to performance and to some sort of review of quality in the teaching process and the learning process. The reason I'm standing on this side is because I missed the element that really tied the use of standardized test scores to that criterion in teaching and learning. As opposed to the opposition side, where I think the most important factor that they brought into the debate was the question of, will the use of incentives like merit-based pay tied to test scores lead to issues of narrowing the learning process, incentivizing things like cheating. I think the important thing with this is that the concept of taking merit-based pay and applying it to teacher salaries and tying that to test scores is based in sort of a behavioristic theory of reinforcing behaviors, in this case, teaching and positive test scores, where the downfall of that becomes the problem that we're really looking at test scores as outcome-based factors, right? The behavior that leads to the outcome, of course, is hopefully increased student learning and increased quality of teaching. But the problem is that when you reinforce an outcome by paying teachers based on student test scores, what ends up happening is you end up reinforcing any behavior then that leads to that outcome. And there are a lot of concerns there in the question of what behaviors will actually arise then as a result of trying to achieve these test scores and achieve these levels of standardized tests. So I think that overall the biggest question is what's the original purpose of assessment, right? Are we trying to, what are we trying to gain in terms of assessing students? And I think that really it comes back to the fact that we need to use assessments as a form of progressing to some kind of ultimate learning goal rather than sort of just an overall evaluation of did we reach that goal. You can even see this kind of in the fact that most standardized tests are given at the end of the year, where it's almost always too late at that point to use it as a positive informational tool to really fix and adjust the way that the teaching process, the learning process could be improved. And by the time that summer break ends and students get back to school in the fall with different teachers and different grade levels, it's almost always too late then for any kind of improvements to happen as a result of the test. And so I think we need to revisit sort of a model of testing where we're using it for the improvement of students, where we're using it for the bettering of education, rather than, as I think the opposition side did a good job of showing, sort of incentivizing the outcomes of the test scores rather than sort of reinforcing the behaviors that we're looking for. So I think you guys both did a great job. Both sides did a wonderful job. I think to the letter of the debate format and the original question, should teacher salaries be based on test scores? For me, at least, I think the opposition side did a better job making that point. So, thank you guys.
Here.
We thank our guest judges very much for all that. It was wonderful. So everyone here who is not part of the University of Rochester Debate Union know that our meetings, our public debates in the future are totally open to the public. So please, if you have any sort of scenarios that you would like to include the debate in, the coaches, we have 4 coaches here, Dr. Ken Johnson, Mr. Ken Johnson, who we spoke to, Gordy Miller, who's the assistant director, and then Alex and myself. And we're always students as well available to help or assist with any sort of public debates in your classes or with the groups that you have on campus. So that's wonderful. Thank you very much to the 4 debaters for speaking. And I'm going to close this, adjourn the public debate.